What is up, boys and girls? It's your pal Jay Stone, and it is time for another episode of Both Laugh, the Dying Scene Quarantine Chat Show. It is, I guess, technically still quarantine, so we're still calling it that. Maybe we'll have to reevaluate the name one of these months, hopefully, fingers crossed. But for now, it's episode 52 of Both Laugh. We are joined by a really fun and unique guest this time. If I do say so myself, I know that I always say I had a really good time doing this one and I was excited to do it, but that is certainly true of this one. The guest this time out is Tuna Tardugno. She fronts the band Sweat, which is a Los Angeles hardcore band, but they're not a typical hardcore band. They bring some interesting elements to them, and if there's one thing in a lot of the material that's been written about the band to date, they're still a pretty new band, but the thing that tends to strike people is that they sound different and they are doing different things than other hardcore bands. And I think that that is entirely true. There are riffs upon riffs upon riffs on this album. There's some 70s grooves to it. It's a really interesting album. As for those that have been fans of Dying Scene over the years, you might realize that hardcore is not necessarily my wheelhouse. That is certainly still the case. But this is a fun album, and I highly encourage you to check it out. It's out on Pirates Press, one of my favorite labels. It came out a couple of weeks ago, so you can find it wherever you get records. It is available on vinyl physically. I'm holding it in my hands as we speak. It probably should have been out a long time ago, thanks to Adeles, but it is what it is. So enjoy this conversation. Like I said, this was really fun, and I had a good time doing this. We talk an awful lot about hardcore and about growing up in upstate New York, as Tuna did, and about her career in wrestling and some of the parallels really between the DIY wrestling world and the DIY punk and hardcore world. And we talk shit and we have some laughs, and I may or may not get myself in trouble with certain members of the Boston community, but you'll have to listen and find out. Anyway, it is episode 52 of Both Laugh, and it is coming up right after the intro music. All right, so the recording in progress sign means that it's time to dive into another episode of Both Laugh, the Dying Scene Quarantine Chat Show. I think it's episode 52. Since we got this ball rolling, you would think I would have counted. And while we've had people who are fans of wrestling and certainly have been in hardcore bands, this is the first time we've had a guest who you might actually know from both of those worlds. She fronts the band Sweat, who just put out their debut full-length album, Got to Give It Up, which we'll talk about, which I can feel like a talk show host and hold it up because it's awesome. We'll talk about that. It's out on Pirates Press Records, came out a couple of weeks ago. Tuna Tardugno, which I think I pronounced right. Thanks for coming on the show. This is cool.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
I kick a lot of these shows off by talking, as I was sort of intimating before we hit record, the show really started in the early days of quarantine to talk about people who had their plans canceled by quarantine and had to put things on hold, and then started doing things to sort of be creative and stay connected to people both inside and outside their bands. But I feel like Sweat has a little bit of a different angle on that, because you guys essentially just got together in like 2019 and then the world shut down basically, right? Like,
oh yeah,
perfect timing.
It's great timing. Yeah, I had a bunch of things like lined up in like many creative outlets, and they all just like shut down like right away. Like,
yeah, what would 2020 have looked like had the world not ended?
I mean, Justin, who plays guitar, he was like working, his friend Robert runs a record store in Berlin, and like he was already in the talks with him about like maybe doing Europe in the summer. And I mean, if we weren't going to do Europe, we were planning on doing like West Coast, East Coast, maybe Mexico, you know. We were just like, let's just hit the ground running and just nonstop tour. And he's a professor, so like he kind of like shows that so that he could have ample time to
Yeah, right.
So like, yeah, we were like ready to do that. We had the 7-inch coming out in April. Like we were really like ready to go. And then, you know, that got the kibosh. And then it was funny because the record came out, and of course, because of COVID and all of like the Adeles of the world, and then just like the general like shortage of everything, like the record was supposed to come out in like October, and then it's like, wait, just kidding,
wow.
coming out in December, just kidding, it's gonna come out in February. And it's just because like supply chain and like just everything is just like, so it's like COVID keeps fucking us. And then like we've had a couple shows even this month get canceled because like, you know, it's still spiking. So it's like, we're really trying, man. We just want to play.
I feel like on this show, especially people within the last maybe 6 or 8 months that have put out albums, I feel like we're all united in like the fuck Adele thing, because she's like that.
She truly fucked us.
She really like threw the whole supply chain into chaos. And I mean, it's what there are certainly other examples, but I feel like everybody's sort of in unison about fuck Adele.
Well, because she wanted 500,000 records on release day available. You know, like it wasn't like I'm gonna put out a ton and then like just continuously press them. She's like, no, everyone needs to stop what they're doing and put my record out. And it's like, no one's buying Adele to fucking listen to it on vinyl. Like everyone's just streaming you. Like it's just
that is I mean, I know very little about the business side of things, but that seems like a huge misread of her target market.
I mean, she sold a lot of records. I don't know if she sold 500,000 in the first week, but
I know she moved a lot of vinyl records. I don't know if they sold.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, I feel like they're going to be at Target and Walmart just sort of in perpetuity, like forever.
Yeah. And then it's funny because it's like, you know, all of the like smaller places, like the smaller record plants have closed down since then. Like when I first got like the dog teeth 7-inch pressed, like 6, 7, 8 years ago, whenever that was, Jesus Christ.
Oh, really? Was it really that long ago?
Yeah, that came out 2014.
Holy
That's
shit.
crazy. Yeah, that was it. That was with Bill Smith, which was right in what, El Segundo. And I believe Jack White bought all of his stuff from him. So it's like that one was gone. And then we used to have Rainbow Records out here. That's gone. So it's like there's like less and less pressing plants. And like the whole like everyone that supported the record pressing plants for like the time when like vinyl wasn't cool is now just getting like totally fucked. And now it's like the majors are back in the pressing plants, and like all the other people that like consistently put out records for the past 20 years to like keep those things open are now like fucked, you know?
Yeah. And so few people made new pressing plants. Like it wasn't a thing. Skippy from Pirates Press was actually one of the first guests back when I was doing this show on Instagram Live. And frankly, I love you, Skippy, but he had a bad cell connection because we were doing it over Instagram and whatever. And if you don't have a good cell connection, then it was basically just me talking to myself for a while, and he would freeze and whatever. But we've had some good conversations, he and I, about that whole side of the industry, because I think that it's a thing that people either don't know about or certainly take for granted, the business side of actually physically pressing a record.
I remember when I went to go pick up the dog teeth test presses, they let me into the plant, and I was like, whoa, this is how records are made. I was like, this is so cool. And they're like literally just like miserable ass people throwing like pieces of wax on the blacks. They're like, who's Carol? And I'm like, ah.
I feel like it was like an episode of, I feel like either Reading Rainbow or Mr. Rogers or something. Was it? Okay. I feel like there was one about making, maybe, but I feel like, I don't know, that's got to be 35 years in my past. So I'm probably misconnecting a few of those wires upstairs, but I feel like there was one about record pressing plants or something like that. But yeah, you're right. It's probably just the crayons.
Well, that's what I immediately thought of, was like, whoa, this is Sesame Street when they made the crayons.
Absolutely.
Just like such a vivid memory.
So how did the band actually start? Because like you said, you hit the ground running. Was that really the goal from the first couple practices or whatever, to really start this new thing and go gung-ho? Or
Yeah, so Justin has been in a million bands and is just, like consistently toured his whole life, basically, like his whole adult life. And Anthony as well. And like both of them are insane musicians. I was really good friends with both of them. I had been wanting to start a band with Justin for a long time just because he's such a ripper and like, so and like Anthony played in Dogtooth for a while. So like I knew like Anthony and I gel well. And then I really wanted to play with Justin, but he was always in like 10 bands. And I'm like, he's never gonna have time for it. But yeah, it was just like he had asked me to fill in for Graf Orlock. We did like a couple East Coast shows, which was really funny. Because he didn't tell anybody that I was doing it at all. So like
that's awesome.
We would just show up and like everyone's like, oh, this is the merch girl. And then like we'd start and I just go up on stage and everyone's like, what is happening?
That's awesome.
And then I felt really bad because it was a show in Providence actually. And like a group of like 4 or 5 people from Quebec drove down and like for Graf and like they were so pumped. And I was like, oh man, I feel really bad. Like they want to see Kyle, not me. And like, but they were like super pumped and they were like, I can't believe we saw this. Like, what the hell is going on? But they were like pumped on it. So it was cool. But yeah, it was just like really funny. And then, so I think like, then Justin's like, oh, we can like play together too. Cause not everyone like works together.
Right.
So like, I think he was like, okay, yeah, let's do it. And yeah, it was, we were all really close friends anyways. And like, I've never had any luck, like gaining enough momentum to like do tours and whatnot. Like I think Dogtooth did like one week tour, but it was always like too hard to get people's schedules and money wise and all this stuff. And so like, Justin's a pro at it and Anthony as well. So I'm really lucky. Like, I feel really lucky to be playing with them because they're just like great people, B like my best friends and insane musicians. Like sometimes like we'll be practicing and I'm just like watching them like jaw open and I'm like, how the fuck did I whatever, I'm gonna keep doing this tight.
I was gonna say, is that a thing that sort of like pushes you to be better in your own aspect in the band? Because watching those guys sort of do what they do, like you kind of have to raise the bar for yourself.
Yeah. And I think it's cool too because like I feel like just Anthony and I had already had like because we played together, like we understood each other's language, but like I didn't understand Justin's guitar language for a minute. Like he just counts differently than I normally do. So like once we got that, it was like way easier to communicate. And it's just cool to see Anthony like just seamlessly be like, I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about. It's this, and like would like bring us all together. And I'm like, okay, cool.
But those two had never played together before, right?
No, they had.
Okay.
Drums in Dangers as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and they've been like on plenty of tours together. So like, they're like, oh yeah, they're like in the pocket. They're good. They're big chilling.
Right.
So yeah, it's cool. And it's also, I feel like a little challenging for all of us because like, I feel like the chains are off of Anthony because he's like, just like, do what you want. You don't have to fit like, the shape of a traditional, like, we're a hardcore band, even though we're trying to explore a different sound, you have to stay in these parameters. We're just like, let's take the chains off. Like I like listen to a ton of disco. So I'm always like, oh, what if we make it a little more funky? You're like, what if we do this? And then it's cool too, because like just like the way Justin's brain works musically is pretty interesting. So like trying to find a middle ground and be like, what if you did that, but did it this way? Or what if you added this thing? And it's just like, yeah. So even though I don't play anything, like I think I'm very like present in their writing process.
Did the writing happen quick? Because I mean, it seems like, especially if the timeline, if COVID didn't interrupt things, I mean, the EP came out and then it feels like you kind of got to work on the full length kind of right away.
Justin's a riff machine. He has unlimited riffs. I don't know like what, it's insane. We actually are recording next month a new record. Yeah. Like
well, I guess you have to because it'll be 2 years before anybody can get it printed.
He I feel like if like I told him like you got to chill out because like I don't have enough to bitch about like to write all these words. Like if I didn't tell him that, he probably would be like 25 songs deep and just like he's just like I don't know how he does it. He's also like written so many records of his own between like Graf and Ghost Slim and Dangers and all the things he's done. I'm like, how do you have so many songs in you?
It is wild. And he is, like you said, he's a riff machine. And I think that
He is.
that's really one of the things that sort of stands out about the album is I know that there's sort of quotes out there about people saying that it's interesting and it's fun this far down the road to see a hardcore band that's doing something new. And so first off, that's got to be a pretty cool thing to hear from old gray-haired guys like me that say like, oh, that's actually like that's something I haven't heard before. But was that sort of the goal? Like, we don't just want to be a hardcore band. We want to do something different, and when it becomes, it becomes.
Yeah. I mean, I think more or less like the first goal was we want to play together because we all like each other and we want to like just have fun, you know? So like that was like the first thing, you know, and then we just kind of like didn't like, we had ideas where like, oh, I mean, it was mostly me being a brat and like wanting to get my way. Being like, I want Think Lizzy and Chromax. Like,
yeah, absolutely. I can hear both of those things. And if people haven't
Yeah.
heard the albums, like those two things shouldn't go together, but they do.
So, but yeah, and then Justin like draws from different things and Anthony draws from different things. But then like, I think the more songs we write together, like, I don't know. I don't think we have anything like necessarily in mind. It's not like we're like, oh, we need to sound like this or that's it. We just kind of like put something together. And like, I think maybe a lot of like the criticism that we've gotten, like in terms of like friends that are like overhearing it and being like, oh, what about this, is like it needs to be a little bit more structured with like choruses, like coherent choruses and whatnot. So sometimes we'll like try and think of it in like those kinds of terms to like make it a little less like I don't know, not traditional. But yeah, I mean, other than that, we don't really necessarily like, we aren't trying to fit a mold. I guess like it's like, you know, under the rock and roll umbrella, I don't want to leave hardcore, you know, so it's like that's kind of like where we're at. But yeah, it's just kind of like, I don't know. I think they're both like individually, they're both such good musicians. I don't think they should be boxed up. Take the chains off, baby.
Yeah, I think that's probably the element that people hear when they say that it's something new, because there are those sort of like 70s rock grooves, but it's in a hardcore song. It's this weird layering thing. And so I think one of the things that I sort of like is that it doesn't follow any sort of, you know, it's not verse, chorus, bridge, repeat, you know, like a Tim Barry song. I love Tim Barry, but he makes fun of himself, so it's fine. Like it some of it is free form, and just when you think you kind of have it
Psych.
figured out, yeah, exactly. Like there's I'm trying to think of a song, maybe New Kind of Dag does that sort of thing. It just kind of like pulls an okey doke on you and you go, oh, wait a minute, this is different.
Yeah.
Does that sort of open you up to who you can play with a little bit too, or do you kind of stay in the hardcore realm?
I mean, once we can play shows, we'll play.
Yeah, when you're allowed to play.
Like we just played our like 9th show the other day. We have our record release show on Thursday, which I don't know when this is coming out, but in
before then, yeah.
We're having our record release show. So like we still have played only a handful of shows. I think that, you know, we're mostly playing just like hardcore shows because we're playing with our friends and whatnot. But yeah, like, you know, I still would want to play with you know, I don't know. It's weird because like I've always wanted to play with Chromags, but like it's kind of weird now. I would love to play with Mackie. I'll say that. How about that? Yeah,
okay, exactly. Yeah.
He's the perfect neutral.
I shot pictures at a Chromag show a few years ago, and I didn't know which Chromags it was at the time because they was part of like a festival thing. And I was like, oh,
Harley Chromags.
It was not Harley Chromags.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
It was really interesting. Yeah. It was unexpected. Let's put it that way.
Whenever I don't know, I just love Mackie so much.
Yeah. Like you said, he's sort of the stabilizing.
He's the perfect
force.
he's like one of my all-time favorite hardcore drummers as well.
Which they desperately need, that sort of stabilizing force.
a friend of mine just sent me this shoot. I feel like I have to find it so that I can not tell you the wrong band he was, but he was playing like a modern soul band.
Really?
Yeah, it was, I've never seen it before. So this is so unprofessional.
It's
Fine.
punk rock. There's no such thing.
All right, where the hell is it?
Yeah, that would be wild. And I'm trying to rack my brain to think of how those circles would even overlap.
I mean, it's funny because as soon as you hear it, you're like, oh, that's totally his drumming. And also like on his drum kit, it just says like Mackie. Doesn't even hide it. It's perfect.
Oh, that's funny.
I don't want to waste too much of your time.
No, that's
It's so good. I listen to it a bunch too.
be funny. I can go back in and edit in this.
Okay. How about I'll just send it to you after.
Yeah, there you go.
Word for it.
Yeah, no, I'm really curious now to hear, because that's like I said, how those sort of scenes would even overlap. That somebody
I think he was just around. I think he's just, I think he's just like one of those guys where it's like he's a great drummer. Like, he's a fucking metronome.
Yeah. You guys recorded with Jack Shirley at Atomic. Yeah, that's Grammy-nominated Jack Shirley, which
means he didn't win.
Well, no, but still it's a thing. and
I'm just kidding. I love Jack. I would say that to his face.
I think it's he doesn't like hold that over people. Like, I was nominated for a Grammy.
Yeah, and then we have to take him back down to earth and tell him that means you lost. Get better.
So how is that experience? He's a guy whose brain that I've always wanted to pick because he's done such interesting and different sort of work over the years, especially for a comparatively young guy. I always had this picture of Jack Shirley as though he's somebody that's been around forever, because theoretically he has been, except that I think he's a couple of years younger than I am. So that's
I think he just knew what he wanted to do at a young age and was smart enough to do it.
Well, it's weird when you grow up in a scene and you realize that some of those guys are actually your age or younger than you. You just have this image of everybody's always older than you or whatever. Yeah. And it's like, oh shit, I'm sitting on my porch right now and he's Jack Shirley.
I met Jack when we recorded the 7-inch, which was at the very beginning, like the first weekend of 2020. Justin has been best friends with Jack since who knows how long, probably 15, 20 years at this point. So like they knew each other from forever. But yeah, the first time I met him was when we recorded, and I was like, we kind of got the slot really, really last minute, like 2 weeks before. And Justin's like, let's just go record these songs. We have them written already. I'm like, okay, sure. So it was just kind of like, all right. So I didn't know how it was going to be. I've never like professionally recorded, like Dog Teeth, the guitarist in that band, Kim, she recorded us. So it's always been like very like non-professional. I mean, she does a great job. I think those recordings came out good, but she doesn't have like her own place in her own studio and all that. Yeah. So I was like, just walking in, like his studio is insane. It's like, it's so nice. But he was really sweet. He was really easy to work with. I hate doing vocals without a band behind me so much. And I was like, not like scared, but I was like, just like dreading it. And like instantly he was just like, no, it's cool. And then he's like, oh shit. Cause there was like a bunch of people sitting in like the recording room when I was recording. He's like, do you want to get these assholes out of here? I'm like, that's fine. But it was just like, even him like recognizing like this could be like kind of shitty for you. And like, he didn't know me,
Yeah,
like,
right.
Just like, I don't know. He's just a really good dude. And he's really smart. And like, it was just cool to see all that shit. Cause like, I've also worked at a record store forever. So it's like, I don't know. I was like, this is like the back of a Sonny and Cher record. This is so cool.
Yeah, right.
And then he has like this like crazy reverb machine. And I'd never seen like what one actually looks like. And it's just like a big, huge like wooden box basically. And I was like, what the hell are these things? Cause he had 3 of them and he's like, his studio is like super spotless. So I knew it wasn't junk. But I was like, what is this thing? And it's like outside the studio walls. And he's like, oh, that's a reverb machine. I'm like, what? And he's like, oh yeah, that one was used on Fleetwood Mac Rumors. And I'm like, what? And he's like, oh yeah. And then he just like went about his business. And I'm like, it's just like, I don't know. He's so smart. And he's just like, he's just really cool. And then he makes us pasta every time we record with him.
Oh, nice. Is that who you're recording with?
He does that for Sweat. I don't think that comes with every booking session. So
right.
I don't know. Maybe he should charge extra for it because he makes real good sauce.
Is that who you're recording with in a couple of weeks?
Yeah.
Is that like the thing? Like that's part of the secret sauce for Sweat now?
Yeah, I think so. And like he I think if we do like shows up in the Bay Area, like he'll probably play second guitar for us. And
Oh,
because
okay.
we recorded some like live sessions in July last year, and he played second guitar on that, and it sounded awesome. So hopefully we can get him in the mix when he's available, but he's always just so fucking busy
Yeah.
because he's
Yeah.
bad at what he does.
Because he's only Grammy nominated. You grew up in upstate New York, like I said before, not to plug somebody else's show, but I was listening to a little bit of the Turned Out a Punk podcast episode that you were on, and it and I mean, I grew up in New Hampshire, which had no punk rock scene whatsoever. And every time I say that, people try to think of bands and then they can't because there was no punk rock scene whatsoever. We claim like Gigi Allen, a generation before me, and that's basically the only like punk rock guy that, or the Queers, I guess, are from New Hampshire. Well, one of the
Allen was from New Hampshire.
Yeah, Gigi Allen's from New Hampshire. Ronnie James Dio is from New Hampshire.
Oh wow.
And Joe Queer is from New Hampshire, and that's basically like, I mean, those for a small state, I guess we did okay, but it doesn't lend itself to a scene, you know, like yeah. So what was upstate New York like? Because I'm baffled by any time that there's a scene that exists like outside Boston, New York, Providence, places like that.
Well, I actually like grew up in Rome, which is like 40 minutes from Syracuse. So the scene in Rome, there wasn't really one. Like my friends had a band called King Dump. They started just like doing like, you know, Misfits and Ramones covers.
Yeah.
And Dead Kennedys and shit like that. And then they like ended up writing their own music. And then that band No Fucker, they're from Utica, which is like a town over from Rome. So for a while, the singer John, he had like this really sick building in Utica. He bought it for like no money. It was huge. It was like four stories. And like we all just like helped him built it out. And like he had like screen printing plant in the bottom. And then he had like the guitarist in No Fucker. He did play drums for a while in No Fucker. Jesse is like, he had like a little record store in there. And then
wow.
Their friends had like a coffee shop, and then like the top couple floors were apartments, but then he had a venue. Like it was so sick. So like looking back, I'm like, wow, I'm so like, I don't know, like I fell out of touch with John for a while, and we reconnected a few years ago, and it's just like, I don't know, he's really like a like super like my punk rock father figure.
Yeah.
You would hate to hear that too, sorry John. But like he really like, and I even asked him then, I'm like, why did you like me? Like I'm so annoying. And he was just like always so cool to me. And like, I don't know, he just like taught me so much shit, and he's taught me so much cool shit. And like he like made it like, he made it realistic to be like, anything you want to do, you can do, just fucking do it. You know, like it just like, it wasn't a thing, you know. And I'm like, oh man, like you can like go to Japan and play a bunch of shows if you want. He's like, yeah, like, you know, like he had like they would play a bunch of shows like Disclose, and like I met Kawakami, like, you know, which is like pretty wild. Like he was just like hanging out in Utica at this shop, you know.
That's wild.
Yeah. And then like John would like bring us to shows all over. But yeah, so we would go to Syracuse all the time. And then when I got my like license, like immediately I was just like in Syracuse all the time, just for any show there.
Are there a lot of bands that come through Syracuse?
Yeah, we had, so I talked about him on the other one. This guy Ryan Hex, he would book like all the shows when I was growing up. And I would go to almost any show he booked, because like he just always brought everyone through. I think a lot of people that aren't from the Northeast don't realize how big New York State is. Like from Buffalo to New York City is like what, 8 hours, you know? So like Syracuse is a really good stopping point. If you're doing like New York to Toronto, like Syracuse is a good stopping point. Even if you're doing Buffalo to like Albany or something, that's still 5 hours. Like so Syracuse is a nice middle point. Or if you're just doing like a weekend of shows, you could do Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, and have like 3 pretty different shows. But yeah, we would get a lot of people. I think, you know, like Syracuse had like kind of the like prestige, I guess, of like the New Year's shows. So a lot of people like that. Like there was a big tough guy scene. There was like a big like punker scene, like I don't know, like Casualties-esque kind of like
Yeah,
and then there was like the like, more like two-steppy Boston hardcore like attraction scene. And like I feel like Hex did a pretty good job at like mixing all of them together. But yeah, so like I think that there were just like a lot of things all the time. It's weird too because you would think like because Syracuse is a really big college town. I don't feel like a whole lot of college kids were going to those shows. I feel like those were like the non-college kids that were at the shows. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was just like young and like enamored and thought that everyone was a punk, but it didn't feel that way. And then the last time I went to a show in Syracuse, when I went home to visit, it didn't seem like a whole lot of like SU students were there. It seemed like still like the punks that lived in Syracuse.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like, I mean, I have limited knowledge of people that went to Syracuse, and I think that most of the people that I know that went to Syracuse are sports writers. And so they're not necessarily like the punk rockers, you know, like, whereas it was probably easier in Boston, although we had a weird scene by the time that I moved. I went to college in Boston, and the scene was really weird then by the time that I moved there. So it was like after all the Boston hardcore stuff and right around the time that the cops started shutting down house shows and stuff like that. And we had the skinhead thing versus the FSU thing. And so it just got like, and they'd show up at the most random show, like at a Less Than Jake show or in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, like FSU showing. I'm like, what the fuck? Like we can't even go here. Like,
oh man. Yeah. It was funny. I had a friend who's from out here who's great. He lived in Boston for like maybe 1 or 2 years. And we went to visit him and we're like, oh, like, how is it out here? He's like, it's fucking weird. He's like, all the punks are Republicans.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa. But it was just like funny because like I don't know. I went to Boston a few times for shows, but not too much. So it was funny to hear that. But then it's also funny because on the flip side of that, like a lot of my favorite, like more current hardcore bands are from Boston,
Yeah.
Like Rival Mob and Boston Strangler and all them. Like they're just like those are like perfect fucking records. And then, but then there's like also so much like other bullshit going on there too.
Yeah, there's a weird that whole faction of the scene is bizarre too. It's very real though. There's a lot of boy, not to throw major bands under the bus, but there's a lot of fans of, let's say, probably the most popular Boston band of the last 20 years that are really, I mean, that are cops, literally. So, like, well, don't get me started. I'm gonna make some enemies on this show. Sorry. That? No, it's fine.
We're gonna cut this out and put the video of Mackie playing soul drums.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. Yeah, there goes my chances of getting photo passes when they open up the new concert venue Roadrunner, which whatever. Yeah, that's a weird part of the scene. And I have some friends from Nashville. Well, they're from West Virginia, but their band is based out of Nashville. And they came up to Boston. This is probably 8 or 9 years ago. And they wanted to see like the gritty parts of Boston or whatever that in the town and The Departed and old like Boss Tones and Dropkick Murphys videos and whatever. And I was like, yeah, that doesn't exist, dude. Like,
yeah,
that hasn't been a thing here for a long time. Unfortunately, Boston isn't that by any stretch of the imagination. It hasn't been since probably the late 90s. Like that's, and they were so like bummed out. like Boston's a lot safer. It's a lot nicer. Like you can take your kid out during daylight hours in some of those neighborhoods. And so that part of it is nice, but it's not like that old scene. And the fans of a certain band who play an awful lot of St. Patrick's Day shows in Boston. I mean, do the math. Yeah, they're the worst. Not the band. I say that emphatically, not the band, but the fans of the band are just the worst.
Yeah. It's funny, like it's like the pride and joy of Boston, right? Like that Wahlberg and fucking Brady.
Seriously. Yeah, exactly.
That's good.
Yeah, and who does Wahlberg play in most of his movies? He plays a cop, and they
himself. Wahlberg playing Mark Wahlberg in The Departed Kid.
Yeah, I got stories about that guy too, but that's for
Really?
that's
Ooh,
for well off air.
that's
Yeah, I mean that's the old family neighborhood, and so there's some old family interactions between that family and mine and my mother's side, and um, yeah,
were
that's
they
for off.
flying out of Logan? Because it's just like his face plastered everywhere. It's like all the movies about Boston, and it's like Wahlberg, 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 Matt Damon, Wahlberg, Wahlberg, Wahlberg.
Yeah, and I will say what I will say about Wahlberg is at least he does a Boston accent well, unlike the other two knuckleheads, the Ben Affleck and Matt Damon.
Yeah.
They're awful. Listen, because they're rich kids. At least Wahlberg was a working class kid, you know?
Come back.
He was definitely a scumbag. Folks can Google that.
I can say that because I myself have come up like that. So it's fine.
Yeah, well, boy, before I get myself into, boy, I'm going to piss off a lot of people if I just let myself go. It's a good thing I'm only drinking like water right now, because it's going to be a very different show otherwise. Are there plans to take, yeah, let's get back on track. Yeah, are there plans to take the Sweat show on the road? Hopefully, I know you said the album release is coming up in a couple of days now, but are there plans to take the show on the road? Hopefully, when
Yeah.
things open up.
We're trying to figure out because we really want to do Europe. I've never toured Europe, never played Europe. That would be so sick. So we're trying to figure out if we should do it in the summer, if the summer is too soon because the record just came out and we haven't played a whole lot of shows, or if we should wait till the winter. But my concern about the winter is like, what if COVID spikes again? Because that's when like gatherings happen and people just get sick in general because of the weather change. So I'm trying to figure that out. Regardless, we're gonna play shows. So I don't know if we're just gonna do like, a full on like 3-4 week tour straight on, or if we're gonna do like, a week on the East Coast, week on the West Coast, maybe do Mexico, maybe do some Canada dates. Like, I don't know. So we're trying to figure that out. But that is the plan. Like, whatever. I gotta quit jobs. I'll quit jobs.
I always get nervous
Here
when
it comes.
bands tour Europe in the winter time, because I feel like every band that you follow, if they're touring in like a Sprinter van or whatever, there's always like pictures of the van off the side of the road because it's so snowy and shit like that. Like, I always get nervous when people tour in the winter.
I think Justin is just such a maniac and he's so like seasoned that like it's
Yeah.
fun. Like
Yeah.
he's done it so many times, and like, he because of his schedule, like he usually has the winter like a month off in the winter, so he's always touring in the winter anyways. So yeah, he knows what he's doing.
I feel like all the COVID restrictions as well, like you were sort of talking about, that just throws another whole level into trying to tour
Yeah.
Europe and how things change between countries. And I think
Mhm.
one of the first bands I talked to on this, when we converted to more of a podcast and started talking over Zoom, was Bad Cop, Bad Cop. And Jenny was talking about how they were essentially like, they were in Europe as things were shutting down, but not every country was shutting down. And so different countries had different regulations. And it was almost like, if you go to Czechoslovakia, you can't go back. And there was all these like weird,
Whoa.
they were like outrunning closings. And then who's going to get the van from this point back to like Sweden, wherever the hell it was wild. And trying to tour through the start of a world shutting down is, I can't imagine.
Yeah, I had a friend, wasn't touring, but he was just out visiting a girlfriend, and he was supposed to be there for a month, and he ended up being there for like 7 months because he couldn't come back. So I mean, he was like, it's cool. Like, he was pumped. He's like,
Yeah.
yeah, if I got a quarantine, I'd rather do it out here. But yeah, it's just like crazy to think that like you're not allowed to leave a place.
Austin Lucas, who's a singer-songwriter from Indiana, he went to Germany to visit his girlfriend, and he was in Germany for over a year, I think.
Whoa.
Just kind of, yeah, hadn't seen his house in Bloomington, Indiana, or whatever that he bought like the year before. Hadn't seen it in over a year, just because it was easier to,
Yeah.
rather, like, she couldn't come here, and then it was going to be hard for him to leave, and then there were different vaccination things going on and different outbreaks at different places. So he just hunkered down in Germany for a year, made a record, and do what you got to do. So as I mentioned in the little introduction, that people might know you from the wrestling world too. And if there's a world that I know less about than hardcore, it's wrestling for sure. Because I feel like I don't know, once I hit 14, and started working, like I didn't have time for wrestling anymore. And so that sort of stayed in my rear view mirror. But is it, I was sort of thinking about this the other day, is, the sort of DIY music scene, the DIY wrestling scenes almost have these sort of paths that mirror each other in the
Yeah.
way that the sort of shows get put on locally in high school gymnasiums and Knights of Columbus halls and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if you know more people that have sort of come through the ranks in music and made it, whatever that means, or through the wrestling world. And which do you think is easier or harder to do?
Oh God. It really depends. Like, I'd say it's well, okay. I guess the difference is wrestling, the rug can get taken out from under you like overnight because someone
Yeah.
decides like, yeah, you're not it, you're cut, like, and that's that. And like, yes, you'll have like your fan base, but like I feel like there's almost a hustle that never can stop to a degree with wrestling. Like you're just like 100% all the time, like, hey, like it's a lot of work. And I feel like the only time you can like chill, and it's not even chilling, is like when you're signed to a major and you're actually like in one of like the upper tiers
Yeah.
in terms of like slots. And even then it's like still a ton of work. You just don't have to like, you're not scrambling to make all your bookings, you're not scrambling to make your merch, you're not, so it's like there's still other things that you have to do, but you're less like, okay, how am I going to pay all my stuff? It's like everything's paid, but you have A, B, C, D, E to fill, and then also even then, like if you break your leg, you break your neck, you do something, like unless you're willing to like take a backstage role or something. So I guess like I don't know, it's so hard to compare the two in terms of success, right? Like,
Yeah, right.
and I'm assuming you mean success in like that's your job, right?
Sure, we can call it that. I mean, I know that success, especially if we're talking about, I guess, DIY punk rock hardcore wrestling. I know that success is sort of a relative term, but I
Yeah,
mean, I guess
like
as
you live
making
off
it
of that.
out of a scene or whatever. So whether it becomes your day job or
Yeah,
sort of making it outside a local circuit, so making a name for yourself.
yeah. I mean, I think if it's hard. I feel like it's hard for like music to just like completely go away. So I feel like in the long term, probably I know more people that are like successful in the music world. Yeah, wrestling's pretty like unforgiving business, and like if like you can be easily forgotten about and like kind of like put to the curb, and it's like very like there's a high turnover rate, there's a lot of like that they want people to be younger and younger and younger, so it's like
Yeah.
shorter and shorter shelf life. So there's a whole bunch of different factors. But that being said, I feel like a lot more people are realizing that it's like there's so much more places to get wrestling from, and there's so many different styles of wrestling, so there is like something for everyone kind of thing.
I think that's maybe one of the big realizations. I know a lot of people that have sort of fallen back in love with wrestling over the
Yeah.
last couple of years.
Yeah.
I think that sort of the Vince McMahon corporatization of wrestling sort of turned a lot of people off to it for a long time. But that also, I mean, just like with major labels and radio and whatever like that, if that's your only exposure to it, then that's all you know about. But I think being at home has allowed more people to get a lot of more entertainment from a lot of other places and realize that, oh, it's not just the Vince McMahon show anymore. Like there's a lot of people who are doing really cool stuff under that level.
And then if you like, I mean, it's not even that. That's what's crazy about it. Like sometimes like, especially like being on shows and like being in the locker room and like hearing people talk and then like watching them perform and being like, holy shit, like your brain works like a crazy person. I love it. Just like how you like think about things and like make it happen. Like it's so sick. But like you realize that like, yes, there's top people because they're like next level wrestlers. And I'm not saying that WWE doesn't have like the most insane wrestlers. However, like there's a lot of people that aren't signed that are like that level. They're just like not willing to do that because there is a lot of like sacrifices and a lot of bullshit you have to swallow to do that, So like there is a lot of talent on like the indie scenes that's just like next level and they just want their freedom, So like I think AEW is kind of giving wrestlers a lot more freedom. So I think that a lot of that talent is being showcased on a national level, which is tight. But yeah, I just love it. I think the more people that like wrestling, the more people that watch wrestling, the more people that support wrestling, there's gonna be more wrestling, you know. So it's like, and there's gonna be different iterations, and you're like, AEW isn't like, oh, we're like WWE but cooler. They're their own thing. You
Yeah.
know, like they're like, their booking is different, like the look is different, the way they tell the stories is different. And so it's really cool how it's like, you know.
Well, it's good that there's a viable, I don't want to say big brother, little brother sort of situation, because like you said, they are different, but it's good that there's another viable outlet now, because I feel like, I mean, for a while it seemed like something else would pop up and then it goes away, and something else
Yeah.
would pop up and then it goes away. Sort of like with football, right? They keep trying to launch these alternate NFL leagues, and
Yeah.
they can't make it through a season for financial reasons and a whole bunch of other things. But so to me, it felt sort of like that for a while, but for whatever reason, AEW gained traction.
Yeah. Money.
That's,
No,
that's
yeah, and I
probably
think
true.
it just makes everyone elevate their stuff, you know. When there's like any sort of competition, everyone has to like do different things and just like figure out a different way to do things, even if you don't agree with, like, you know, a style or a decision or whatever. They're still like, let's try it this way, let's try it this way, let's try it this way.
It dawned on me as we were talking that I should know more about wrestling, because the one person who came from the city that I grew up in is Triple H.
Oh,
He's from the pride of Nashville, New Hampshire.
he trained with Killer Kowalski.
He did. He shopped at the grocery store that I used to work at all the time. He and China back in the day. Yeah, it would be so weird to just like leave work and go to Gold's Gym sort of down the street, and they were both just working out and we're playing
That's so
basketball.
sick.
It was really weird,
That's
but it was
so
just like normal. My uncle graduated the same year that Paul Levesque did, Triple H. And they played football for the high school together. But he was just Paul Levesque. He wasn't Hunter Hearst
China
Helms.
from there too? Where is she from? I don't even remember.
She's not, but she was here because he was, I don't know where she was from. Something tells me she was from Miami, but she wasn't from Nashville anyway.
Dang. I truly wish I would have been able to meet her. She was just so cool. I just always loved like the like women that had like the big ass arms. Like I loved Luna. I loved
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh man, they're so cool. I remember seeing Luna when I was in kindergarten and I was like in love with her. I'm like, she's so cool. I would like tease my hair and like talk like her at school.
Yeah.
I'm like,
yeah, I mean, really my only frame, because that was after I really stopped watching wrestling really, but I knew who they were.
Yeah.
Like, because I knew that other people knew who they were, but to me, they were just like
huge.
Yeah.
He's big. He's big.
He's big.
I don't know about back then, but he's definitely big.
Yeah. This was, well, let's see, what years was I working at the grocery store? Between like 96 and 99. So as they were getting to like the peak of who they became, like, yeah, they were big, but they were just like people that came into that I'd have to find yogurt for or whatever. Like there's a weird connection there.
That's pretty tight.
Yeah, it didn't really dawn on me until we were talking right now. I was like, oh yeah, I should know. I should care more about wrestling because I went to the same high school as Triple H. I'll start watching again. When are Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty still alive? I don't know. Like they were my favorite back in the day. The Rockers.
They are. They're both still alive. Yeah. Shawn Michaels helps out with like the developmental program for WWE, which is like so sick.
I do know that Brutus the Barber Beefcake lives not far from where I live now too. And
look at you.
And people can Google why that might have made the news maybe 15 years ago, because he started an anthrax scare at one of the T stations in downtown Boston. That
so fucked. I love it.
Is a true story. It wasn't, and I hate to make light of the situation because it was a sad situation, but he left his cocaine he was working at the toll collection agent thing at like for the Mass Bay Transit Association, the MBTA. He was working at one of the T stations and he left his baggie of coke in the train station, and somebody thought it was anthrax because it's like during the time of when an anthrax scare was a thing, and so it shut down. Yeah, yeah, it's bad to make light of. It was a sad situation.
How
And
do I not remember that? I don't remember that at
yeah,
all.
it's got to be like 2004, 5, somewhere in that neighborhood. It was when anthrax scares were
Yeah.
sort of a thing a little bit. Yeah, he definitely there was definitely an Orange Line station in downtown Boston that got shut down for a day.
Oh,
Go- Google it or don't, because really it's sad. And I do understand that he has sort of turned things around since those days, but I don't want to take up too much of your evening. This has been a fun chat.
yeah.
People can, like I said, I'll pretend I'm a talk show host. I'll pretend I'm
Yeah.
Letterman, who's my idol. People can buy the album. I see, now I will have to put the video version up. People can buy the album. It's called Gotta Give It Up. It's on Pirates Press Records. It's out later than it should have been, thanks to Adele, but it is out. You can buy it from Pirates Press, and you can probably find it at good record stores. Tuna, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This has been great.